Let's go. Game time. The standard is the standard. That's our motto. That's our creed.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Better Baby Daddy podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, John Latchman.
And I am your other co-host, Kelly Burgess.
And today we are joined with the positive and powerful Dr. Jeffrey Holmes. Dr. Holmes, can you tell us why you are joining us here on the Better Baby Daddy Club podcast?
Well, thank you so much for having me as I want to start. Better Baby Daddy Club is an attractive name. When John actually started to speak about Better Baby Daddy Club, I said, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that. Because I am a baby daddy. And a father and a husband. And so I've worn that hat for a number of years. Started out as a baby daddy before I became a husband and a father. I've always been a father. It doesn't matter, married or not. I've always been a father, but I started out as a baby daddy before I became a husband and I'll just say in the home father, if you will. So when you talk about my journey, not everyone can be a part of the Better Baby Daddy Club. It's a special story. It's a special place. It's a special gift that some of us signed up for early in life. Some of us signed up for later in life. It is a challenging and arduous road, and it's always been my hope to help other young men navigate that process. I became a baby daddy at 20 years old. I was a sophomore in college. It took me, being a baby daddy took me 7 years to earn my first degree. But so becoming a baby daddy, it definitely takes perseverance because it definitely, you take a different path in your life. And many times it's a more arduous path, but it's a path where you got to dig deeper. You got to persevere. You got to be resilient. You got to be determined, all while you're modeling that for your child. In spite of individuals who attempt to, in some regards, remove you from the situation. So being young and immature, I made a lot of mistakes. Mistakes that when I look at my daughter now, who's 36 years old, things that I would definitely have done differently. One thing is I would have, I now ascribe to being quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And when I get angry, I probably should have walked away more early on than I did later on. I probably should have walked away and waited for opportune time to engage with my daughter's mom. I didn't do that. When you're young, I think your ego is a little bigger, a lot more testosterone, a lot more vigor, and you don't play with respect. You know, there are many things that you can perceive or that is disrespect that will take you off course. And so as you get older and as you mature, and when you see the other side of it, you know, you say, was it worth it? Because at the other side of it is another human being who will grow up and they will take what you have modeled in front of them and reproduce it for you. And some of the things in way in which you handle conflict, the way in which you communicate, collaborate, how you respond to the highs and lows of life, it will be reproduced. And as a parent, some of those behaviors that you exhibited, you don't want reproduced in your kids because you didn't like it when you went through it. right? And so you try to help your children avoid, and all of us as parents, we help our children to avoid some of the errors that we made. Another thing I think um, we lose sight of is there are things that we try to help our children avoid, but one thing I think is a mistake is productive struggle, right? Um, as parents, we feel like we have to compensate. Oh, I created this. We guilt ourselves into doing certain things for our children and not allowing them to experience productive struggle. So then you develop a dependent child because you never let them struggle. Um, you didn't want to be seen as the bad guy. You try very hard to be the opposite of the narrative the negative narrative that other people try to portray. And that takes a lot of maturity. That takes a lot of deep breaths. That takes a lot of biting your tongue. And at 20 years old, you're not having that. That probably came along for me when I was actually my wife had to teach me. You know, I got married.
Mm.
My daughter was born when I was 20. I got married at 27. I did not marry my daughter's mother. I got married at 27, and I probably did not. Um, a lot of lessons begin to come. My eyes begin to come open in my mid 30s. That's what my daughter is now. So I'm hoping her eyes are opening. But as it relates to relationship that she and I have, and the relationship that I had with her mom. So I'm going to say mid to late 30s is when things started to, I started to handle things a bit different. But
Mm.
I want to say to young men, a lot of people talk about the money, right? Child support. A buddy of mine, a guy who we were in a barbershop, we talked about that little acronym on your check. And back in the day, the acronym was CHISUP. And we know that CHISUP, CHSP, was your child support payments. But there is more than a monetary cost. There's also an emotional cost, a psychological cost, a physical cost. Um,
Mm.
when you are taking this road. It's important that I really appreciate you guys starting this podcast because most of us just kind of learn through trial and error. And just learning through trial and error and not talking to other men who are in the same situation. Sometimes your errors can cost you more than you were willing to pay. And so
Mhm.
hopefully, the better baby daddy club will save you some time, will save you some money, will save you some stress, will save you from yourself at times. And so
Hey.
I didn't have that. In the early 90s, it was, figure it out. I leaned a lot on my
Yes.
spiritual upbringing. I leaned a lot on guidance from the wisdom from my father. But there are guys or there are guys now who just kind of learn what to do in the barbershop. And sometimes the barbershop conversation is not the appropriate way. You can get some nuggets, but you know, you learn it at the barbershop, you learn it on the basketball court, and that's learning too. And then you realize that some of the advice that you receive, you know, cost you more than you want to pay. Um,
Mm.
for example,
Well, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
one piece of advice I got from the barbershop was, all you gotta do is tap the mom up now and then, she'll leave you alone. That's not gonna work. You
It's
can't
not going.
tap the mom up now and again. that's getting you deeper into the hole, no pun intended. Uh,
Hey,
and it's costing you more than you think. So playing with that just led to playing with somebody's emotions and taking advantage of another person for my own selfish gain, but and then it still comes back to blow up in your face. So that's just one piece of advice that I got from the barbershop, and you tried it out, it didn't work.
I tried it out, didn't work.
yeah, Dr. Holmes, thank you so much for just your man, just that you put it the only way it could be put. I really appreciate just how forthright and just on the nose you were about how real it is. There's going to always be a cost. Like the Bible says, God is not going to be mocked. He is going to tally it up. And not that he's looking to just like crack you, but there's, like my dad used to say, you pick up one end of the stick, you pick the other end of the stick up. You got freedom to do what you want to do, but you don't have freedom from the consequences of your decisions. And one thing we tell the guys on the platform is like, look, learn the lessons that we learn, just don't take the same path to learning them. Like you don't have to go off road to learning. And I think that motivated us to start this. Can you speak a little bit about, man, at 20, you're just on the front end of like real life lessons. Like we work in a field where we try to teach children life lessons early before the full weight of a consequence comes on. What was it? Was there an event, a tough conversation? What was it that kind of turned you to like, yo, I got to do a different way. I got to roll a different way in my dealings with women. Maybe it was your marriage. I got to roll a different way in terms of like trying to repair things with my daughter. What would you say was a catalyst to real change with you?
Um, I would say a catalyst for change. Like I said, my father, he's a very wise man and gave me a lot of wisdom. Um, he didn't live my experience. So sometimes as a 20-year-old, it's like, hey, you really don't know nothing about this. You haven't lived this experience. But he gave me some nuggets. And one um, thing that I had to learn is that my daughter really was the catalyst. Children don't do what we say, they do what we do, right? And I had to learn that whatever did, I was modeling for my daughter. When it came to dealing with or being involved with other women, I always had to remind myself, okay, you now have a daughter. How do you want your daughter to be treated? And that also came from my mom because I have three brothers, and my mom would always tell us, treat a young lady like you want someone to treat your sister or like you want your dad to treat me. So having a girl, I think that was um, God's way of helping me to um, have a different relationship with my daughter's mother because now I have a daughter. And as a father, we are protectors, right? And whatever I wanted for my daughter, I had to model for her so that she knows how to accept and deal with a relationship when she gets older, right? So I think having to model in front of her really was the catalyst to help me, start to operate differently, especially as she got older and begin to understand and try to make sense of the relationship. Um, I had to be more cognizant of how I moved, if you will.
Was she always receptive? I got daughters, Lashman has daughters much younger. Was there a period of time where she was like, hey, I'm really not listening to you? We just had an episode with my daughter and she spoke about there was a period of time with dad, I'm not really hearing you. You know, you don't have that platform in my life. And if so, how did you handle that period of static between you and your daughter?
Well, that probably came along around the teenage years where, so you got to understand that although you chose to create a child early in life, there's still human growth and development will always be at play, right? So at whatever age and stage that you have a child, you're still developing, and the children will go through those developmental milestones. So that age of I'm not listening to you is still going to come just because I'm 13, because I'm 12, because I'm 14, right? Um, some of that I would say with peer group become more influential, it's still going to happen at whatever age and stage I am. So when my daughter went through that age and stage, she was 13, I was 33, right? So I was still going through 30-year-old something, and she was going through 13 something. She's not going to stop development and wait for me to catch up, right? Or understand where she was. So developmental milestones are still going to happen. We just have to mature faster. And when that resistance came up, you still have to address it as a parent. You still have to and addressing it as a parent is having a conversation and again modeling the appropriate behavior, because at that age and stage you're teaching your children respect for authority, right? That's a life skill that you have to learn, because everyone is not going to respond to your wants and how you want them to respond. So you got to be really careful. When in doubt, I just leaned on the way that I was reared, right? Because when in doubt, we always fall back on what we were taught or what we saw, right? So at that age and stage, hey, I'm your father. You may not like what I'm going to say, or you may not like my rules, but such is life. There are going to be other opportunities in life where you don't like things, and there have to be consequences for your behavior. My daughter, being a father, grew me up really quickly. Um, when other individuals were away at college, I couldn't go away to college. I had to be a parent because I had to go to PTA, right? You know,
Mm.
and so those developmental milestones, you still have to parent. You still have to model. You still have to show you're still raising a young man or a young woman that has to function and live in a society. So you got to be consistent.
Mm. Well said. Well said. I want to switch gears slightly and talk about a time. It was probably about 10 years ago now. I remember calling you and I'm upset. I'm just going through it right now with my first BM. And as soon as you answer the phone, you hear my voice, you go, "You didn't hit her, did you?" I said, and it like shook me. I was like, "Nah, man." But
That's a game changer right there.
that is a game changer. And so I want to talk about those early years, that early dynamic between you and your BM. What was that like? And then what was the transition like to where y'all are able to be peaceful, communicative now?
Um, the early years, there was fortunately someone there to stop me. So it wasn't on the telephone. They would
Mm,
just hold on. Whoa, you can't go down that road. At one point, it was my wife who was then my girlfriend, or my
mhm.
parents. My father running into the house like, "No, sir." Um, and you just did what this podcast should do for men. You got to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, "Wait a minute, what you doing? Hold, you're getting ready to add a charge." You're getting ready to add charges, meaning literally uh, a felony, right? Then lawyer fees, court cost, time away from your child while you still paying child support, right? So it adds up. Um, and honestly, like I said, my daughter, having a daughter, said, how do you want a man to respond to your daughter? You know, your daughter's mother is someone's daughter, right? And I believe in, people call it karma, but I believe in you reap what you sow. And so I also had to say to myself, what am I modeling for my daughter that she should accept from a man? Right?
Mm.
Well, my dad hit my mom, so perhaps a guy gonna hit me. And it's okay because that's just how I grew up. No. So I can't hit her mother and then say, don't allow somebody to hit you. Right? That's, children
Mm.
do what we do, not what we say. And I will say, unfortunately, John, my daughter's mother and I did not have an amicable relationship until my daughter was graduating college, right? Um, so for the 18 years, it was a battle, right? 18 years, it was a battle. When it was time to go to college, she would say A, I would say Z. She would say apple, I would say banana. Not even the same shape, color, no, you know. And so when my daughter graduated college, so I'll say this, at age 18, I'll never forget it. We were having an argument in a church parking lot, my daughter's mother and I, about where she was going to go to college and who was going to pay what. And at that moment, I had an epiphany. I was like, wait, she's 18. I don't have to talk to you ever again in life. So I looked at my daughter in that moment and say, whatever you want to talk about, it's you and I. You don't have anything to do with this anymore. So that's the approach. That wasn't the appropriate approach, but that's the approach I took, right? And so for those 4 years, it's like, I don't have to talk to you about anything while she's in college. If she has a problem, tell her, call me, you know?
Mm.
And um, after my daughter finished college, you know, even up to college graduation, we were arguing about the tickets. How many tickets? Who gets how many? Whose friends get what? Who can come to the graduation? You know? So
Mm.
after college, and I would even venture to say maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe when my daughter was in her late 20s is when her mother and I became more amicable. Now she, you know, she'll see me someplace and say, "Hey, baby daddy." I say, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, "Happy Father's Day, baby daddy." Thank you. You know? So, but then I look back and, you know, one thing that is really, I would say hurtful to me is the pain I caused my daughter. You know,
Mm.
through all of those years of animosity and just sitting here reflecting, you know, I need to apologize to my daughter for the pain that she had to endure at no fault of her own.
Mm.
It was because I was immature. Her mom was immature. We were both young. I was 20, she was 19. And my daughter had to endure and witness and experience a lot of emotional pain that was inflicted by her parents. And so now we live in a world where, you know, mental health is at an all-time high. So it's critically important for my daughter to get that apology from her father because I believe that
Mm.
will continue her healing emotionally, psychologically. She's not being healed from physical wounds, but when you talk about mental and psychological trauma, that's the ones that you can't touch with your hands. And so I know that
Mhm.
her mother and I can only speak for me. I have to apologize for the pain that I caused her. Um, and the years of pain. Because when children watch I mean, just in what we call a quote unquote normal situation, when parents argue, it hurts children
Mhm.
because children begin to feel like they have to pick one parent over the other. And my
Mhm.
daughter was in that position for years, where she felt like she had to show a certain amount of allegiance when she was with me and a different amount of allegiance when she was with her mom. And that was my fault. She shouldn't have to live that. A child shouldn't have to live that. So when you think about that, when you have a child um, by someone that you're not married to, you got to take responsibility for it all. You can't say, well, her mother got on my nerves. The mother was crazy. You know, I mean, you picked her. I mean, the mother was this, the mother was that. No, what's your part? No one can
Yeah.
make you do
Mhm.
anything. We all have a free will. Don't say she made me, she tripping, you don't understand. I do understand. But because she tripping, does that mean you got a trip too? Because she lunching,
That's
does that
it.
mean you got lunch too? So now you're telling me you a puppet. You a dope on the rope.
Mm.
Somebody is pulling your
Mhm.
strings and controlling you. So you're telling me you lack self-control because she made you do it. When you say she made me do it, or I had to do this because of her, that you're admitting that you have no self-control.
Mhm.
And that's the
Yeah.
sign
I
of
mean,
immaturity.
that it is. Yeah. And that speaks to some of the challenges that young men we come across, young men that are on the platform wrestle with. Lack of self-control got you in a situation,
Mhm.
and now it's triply harder. You don't have a good network around you generally, like you just alluded to, and you end up doubling down on bad mistakes until it just gets too painful and you decide to do something about it. Um, Man, that's a long road. That's a long road of contention. Takes a grown man to realize, hey, 18, 20 years down the road, I gotta apologize to my daughter for that, the waves and waves of pain that I inflicted. Have you had that conversation, or does it come? Sometimes it doesn't always happen. It's like one conversation. It's several, because things pop up with kids at different times.
Yeah, so
If you had that kind of conversation with you, delve into that a little bit.
my daughter, who is now 36 years old, I have not had a direct conversation with her in terms of an apology, right? I
Right.
have had direct conversations about your mother and I were young. It's probably more, now I have to reflect on it's probably more excuses. We were young, we had a lot going
Yeah.
on. This, that, just say I'm sorry. Right? So my daughter and I have we'll have breakfast or we'll have dinner, and my wife has been very supportive. I'll never forget one of my birthdays. My wife planned a birthday dinner for me, and so we went to Maggiano's in Annapolis Mall. And my sons weren't there. My daughter showed up, and when my daughter showed up, my wife left and said, "This for y'all. She can be with her daddy on your
Wow.
birthday." And I'm sitting there like,
Wow.
whoa. She said, "I see y'all later. Y'all enjoy yourself."
Mhm.
So she's
That's a
been,
boss
she's
move.
been, she understand, right? That's a boss move. So, and it's critically important, gentlemen, that your uh new significant other and your spouse, the person that you choose to be in a long-term relationship with or marriage, that they support you in building and maintaining a relationship with your children. If they're not supporting you with building and maintaining a healthy relationship with your child, that's not the person. right? If they still want to be in contention with the mother, nah, you ain't got to do that. She just, no, no. Anyone who helps you to preserve the relationship between you and your seed, that's who you want. The person who is jealous of your child or envious of the relationship with your child, and that's not the person. Now, I'm not saying, I mean, everything has its place in its perspective. But if that individual is pulling you away from your children, that's not an individual I would not want to have a long-term commitment with.
Mhm.
Wise words.
Very wise. I want to switch gears a little bit again here, and I want to talk about the men you surrounded yourself with at an early age, or maybe not so early age, but later on in life, that have really helped direct you on the correct path. So we like to call it our tribe. So how has your tribe helped direct you or maintain the path that you're on now?
Always tell everyone I am an anomaly, right? Um, in that my father has been there for me from day one. When I wasn't with my father, I would go, my parents ensured that I was always around people who thought like them. So I was at my uncle's house and he thought like my father. I was at my mom's brother's house, my other uncle, and he thought like my mother. And I was also blessed to have a mentor who's now my godfather, um, to pour into me. I started working for him at age 16. And he just really would coach me around relationships. And when my daughter was born, he coached me around how I responded to her mother. And it was interesting because from my family's point of view, it was a more of a spiritual or religious commitment. But my godfather slash mentor, he was that person in my life who could get filth and foul and telling me how to handle my business, right? Um, right now I call him a war hero because he might have dropped a lot of F-bombs. But it was things that I needed to hear in a different way. I think for me, I began to build a tribe, right? I think um in meeting other young brothers who going through the same situation, um it made me, building a tribe like the tribe that you guys are building now, made me more accountable, because I can't say to you this is what you should do and then I'm not doing it. Right? So individuals who may not have that male influence, or not even, it could be a male or female influence in your life, you got to build a tribe, because your tribe will keep you accountable. You're going to tell another guy, man, you ain't supposed to treat your girl like that. And then they're going to look at you and call your words out to you when they get in a situation, when you get in a situation. So if you don't have that tribe, you got to build it. You got to build it, and let your tribe that you're poured into also hold you accountable. You got to be accountable to your words and your actions when you're trying to teach somebody else, right? Like John is a personal trainer. He can't have bad eating habits and telling me how to get my body right. I don't know how that works, right? I don't understand how people might have a fat personal trainer. I don't get that. They're supposed to be modeling the way. Oh, my personal trainer
Hey,
got
ain't that the truth,
diabetes.
man?
My personal trainer got diabetes
Hey.
because you don't eat right. So yeah, that accountability piece, you got to build it in. And continuing to build
Yeah.
that in, um, church, men's groups at church, and fraternity brothers and things of that nature. You got to look at where you got to have a picture of where you want your life to go and surround yourself. surround yourself and put people in the picture with you.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing last minute I say is that you always wanna have a couple guys that's a couple chapters down into the story from you. So they they've seen around some corners, they've navigated tension, particularly in married and committed relationships. There's things you're gonna encounter that you just know in theory, but when you in the heat of that struggle with your lady, or you in the heat of the struggle with that co-parent, and you have no frame of reference, you just flying by the seat of your pants, you just going by, what you see on IG, or, but you dealing with a real person in real time, you better have some brothers that are like, yo, give me a call, step out the house, take a deep breath, don't put your hands on her, regroup. We can always approach this, when you're calmer. Like men need to see that model. Like we almost have to
Absolutely.
role play it. The next thing I talk about, you got to role play like the pain points, like the transition. Like that drop off is going to be tense.
Right. Take
You meeting
somebody with
her,
you.
another, take somebody with you. You just have to have it. But when you're young, you're not even thinking that that's a thing. And I think what you're saying is like, man, just play the head a little bit.
Absolutely. And when I say take someone with you take someone with you when you think you're gonna have a situation with some other dudes. You take somebody with you to help you out, right? And I talked a lot about, my daughter, but if you have a son, you have to model for your son how to treat women. And how if you have to model for your son how to navigate difficult relationships. And if your model is always going physical, then your son gonna be in the situation. Maybe some situations that you avoided, it may fall on your child. Like you might have dodged a charge, but because your son saw that's what you do, he thought he was going to dodge it too, and he doesn't. And
Yeah.
you got to take
Facts.
responsibility for that.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, I'm gonna beat that. I'm gonna beat." Yeah, it's a lot of brothers out there who beat charges, but everybody don't beat them. Everyone's not that fortunate.
No,
You get the
no.
right judge on the wrong day, it's over. You won't get the same grace as the previous person did. So you got to model for your sons how to handle conflict. No one is, many people, I
Yeah.
wouldn't say no one, many people are not teaching conflict resolution. You know, I mean, people tell you to breathe, but I'm breathing when I walk into the situation. I need another coping skill. I need another strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one of the issues is that in our current state, in our current societal state, you know, we fail to understand that I can disagree with someone, but I don't need to be disrespectful just because I disagree with them.
Absolutely.
And learning how to accept that disagreement without disrespect is an art in itself.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I talked about my family a lot, but my family, because of our spiritual grounding, I think building and having a moral compass is very, very important. Um,
Mm.
because when your people are not there, you have to have a moral compass that something on the insides that pulls you back. You got to have a moral compass. I was in China in 2011, and I was very intrigued that they had a course in their schools in morality, right? The children had to take a morality course, right? And so our moral compass is built by our experiences, our environment, um, and things that we subscribe to or open ourselves up to. So my moral compass, because of my family's faith, was built in our Christian faith, right? That was the moral compass, right? To say, hey, this is how you do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? love your neighbor as you would love yourself, right? So those are types of things that build a moral compass. So when the person isn't there physically, and when my cell phone is dead and I can't call someone, I need a moral compass to help me self-regulate.
Yes,
And
sir.
you model for
Yep.
your children
Absolutely.
a moral compass to help them self-regulate.
Yeah. Let's speak to that. Now, you have a unique situation where you've had a second act as a parent, right?
Yes.
Had a daughter early, navigated that the best you could as a young man. It's a tough situation to have a child that early. And then, 10, 15 years down the road, you're able to have, now you got boys and now you're constructing men. What went into your thought process of, hey, as all of us dads do, I want them, I do not want them to experience this. Tell us a little bit about how some of the intentional things you did in your parenting as a dad with that second act, with the wife now who's, supporting you, pulling in the same direction.
As my children aged, I began to be, depending upon their age, let me say it that way, depending upon what age of development, I began to be transparent about what I went through. Hey, if you travel down this road, this is what's going to happen. It is your choice, it is your decision, but traveling down this road, this is where it got me. So, I mean, you can do what
Man.
I did, but at the end of the day, you're going to get my results and yours, right? So I begin to become more transparent with just in relationships. I begin more to be more cognizant of what I modeled in front of them. I begin to be more transparent about my financial mistakes and my financial situations. Like, you think this is free? This is what this costs. So
Yeah.
just like I was transparent around the cost of things financially, I had to be transparent about the cost of things emotionally, psychologically, right? And what that cost me too. And so I am grateful. My children are now 36, 27, and 24, and they have all completed their college education, and I don't have any grandchildren yet because I taught them you can have a child early on in life with an individual, but here's what could happen. How do I know? I
Mm.
lived it. And so my children started to say, oh, no, I'm not doing that. So I say to my sons, right now, your money is yours, and you kind of do what you want to do, go where you want to go, buy expensive concert tickets and things. You can't do that with a child. Let me just help you understand. You cannot buy expensive concert tickets and the child need diapers and milk. You have to reappropriate those funds. You can't go to the concert if the child is sick. I'll give you a real story that I told my sons. I attended Bowie State University. One of the homecoming concerts that I wish I could have attended, the headliners were Biggie Smalls and Tupac at Bowie State University. Homecoming, the legendary, the late great Biggie Smalls and Tupac Shakur were the headliners. I was at home with your sister. And my boy, whoa! You couldn't go see Biggie? What? I was home because I was a father.
Mm.
I could not go see Biggie in two, but that's probably the cheapest I ever would have got their tickets at a Bowie State homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't able to attend because I had a child and a sitter was not available that night. And if it was available, you got to pay the sitter, you got to buy your tickets. I mean, now, in
Ain't happening.
1989, just a few years prior, I was able to go to Go Live at the Capitol Center because
Man, but not the Cap Center.
it was just me. It was my money, it was my time. You got to understand when you have children, it's our money and our time. And so,
Mm.
um, my children, my boys who really um, like the latest and greatest fashion and like to travel and like to go to concerts, they got the message. And now in their early mid 20s, they're traveling literally around the world because they don't have to be tied down to a responsibility because of a decision that I made in the heat of the moment. And I
Mm.
said to them very candidly, I am going to do exactly what your grandfather did to me. That's your child. That's your business. Handle it.
Mm,
Mm.
mm.
In the story.
Hey,
I
real
even
talk.
asked
Yeah.
my dad,
Hey,
I asked my dad to give me money to get my daughter diapers. He said, "You gonna pay me back?" I said, "Pay you back?
Mm,
That's your granddaughter." He said, "That's
mm.
not my child." He said, "I bought your diapers. I do for her when I want to. I did for you because I had to."
There it is.
And he quickly
Hey,
let
Dr.
me
Holmes,
know.
oh,
He quickly let me know. So I was a commuter in undergrad because my father let me know in no uncertain terms, parents don't live on campus. Students live on campus.
uh,
mm. Now we have to have another episode where we just talk about them father-son talks your dad had.
yeah, for real. I got I got one final question for you, and I'm sure B has another question as well. But my question revolves around that blending process that took place with your daughter and your sons and your wife. What was that like?
As I said to you all
Episode
earlier,
3.
as I said to you all earlier, my parents were very intentional about who they let their children be around. So my uncle, to answer that question, I'm going to say like my uncle said to me, porcupines. In the wintertime, in order to get warm and survive winter, they have to come together, right? And when porcupines are coming together, what happens?
They poke each other.
They needle each other. You're absolutely right. And some of that poking is not comfortable. So a blended family
Mm,
is like porcupines coming together to protect and preserve. You're gonna poke each other, right? Sometimes you're gonna poke you. It's gonna be some deep wounds, right? Because you're coming
mm,
together to survive, just like a group of porcupines that's trying to survive a harsh winter. So that's how I will describe my experience in a blended family. But once you came together, you were warm and you were protected. And
mm.
I knew we had come together when there was a time when a younger young lady wanted to be disrespectful to my wife. And my daughter stood up to the younger young lady and said, "You will not do that to my mother."
Mm,
That's when I knew we had
mm,
come together. And that's not her biological mother. When my daughter stood up to
right.
defend her stepmother, then I knew we had blended together to protect each other.
Mm.
But that was a process, wasn't it, Doc?
Process. Porcupines, my brother. It's the porcupine effect.
Hey,
Uh,
It-
I've never heard
it's-
that analogy before. That's
hey,
very interesting.
it
Very interesting.
is. There's gonna be some punctures, some wounds.
it's gonna
Yeah.
be some
Yeah, it
punctures.
is. It
It's gonna be some
yeah,
wounds because you deal with,
yeah.
well, you did this for me and you did this for my brothers. Or you did this for my sister and you didn't do
Mm,
this for me. You get that in a normal family relationship where kids feel like one child is receiving more attention or less attention than the other. You get that, but just think about that, and we got different mothers, right? And it's easily perceived, well, maybe he like her mother. You know what I'm saying? You put yourself in the situation. But when you have a wife, you all come together and you have children together, you come together. No, we did this for you all, for all of you. He needed this, you needed that. It's what it is.
Yep. Very challenging. It's an art and a science. And we haven't even
Yeah.
talked about the adult women together, the wife and the baby mom. That's a whole nother, that's episode 4.
Mm. And
Episode
one
4.
of them,
My
it's
last
not
question.
the ideal situation is both of them are mature to handle it. But you gotta have at least 50%. You can't have two
that's
immature
it.
women. That's not gonna work.
No,
Man.
One person has to be
no.
mature.
Yeah. And they can pick the day. Y'all can switch off. You know, it's very challenging. Well, my last question is this. Um, you're a mentor to a lot of men, Doc. And so imagine you were sitting in a room with 100 jokers that were like you in your 20s, like me in my mid-20s, like L. And we're on the front end of this journey. What's one piece of advice you would give them?
I'm gonna go to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Phone a friend. The right friend.
Mm,
Yeah.
You
mm,
need help. You can't do this by yourself. It is really
mm.
true that no man is an island in no situation. I would say that two is better than one.
Hmm. Amen.
You
Yes,
gotta
sir.
have somebody. You have to build your team. You have to build a team. You have to build a village. With your
That's it,
you
man.
set you set a vision for your life and for your child's life, and get some draft picks to help you make it there.
Hey, that's it.
Hey, I think that's a perfect way to wrap things up. Build a team, build a village. Well, Dr. Holmes, thank you so much. You've been so gracious with your time, with your wisdom, with your insights, and with your honesty. Truly appreciate that. B, I don't know if you have some closing words for Dr. Holmes.
No, we just really appreciate it. More than our audience knows how much you've poured into us personally as men. I know you have kept money in my pocket. You put money in my pocket, and you've kept me out of some sticky situations because of your wisdom and your modeling. You
Mm.
know, and so we appreciate that. And as John said, we appreciate your time, and hopefully it caught the ear of some guys out there.
And I appreciate you guys, because it's reciprocal, right? You guys have poured into me. I mean, I tapped Kelly on the shoulder for a young man who's going through a similar situation in terms of relationship. So, Kelly's gonna pour into him. You know, John is pouring in the kids every day, right? John is helping me to reflect on things in my life that, hey, I could have did that a little bit better. I could have did that different. You know, we all pour and support each other. We always exchanging articles. We always exchanging books to help each other just be a better person, right? Just be not
Yeah.
just a
Yes,
better
sir.
baby daddy, a better man. You know, I know
Mm.
when John makes me do those push-ups, he wants me to be a better man. He wants me to stay around longer for my family.
Yes.
So yeah, it is
Yes,
definitely
Yes.
sir.
reciprocated. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you.
Absolutely,
All
Doc.
right. Yes, sir. 100%. Well, until next time, I'm John,
I'm Kelly.
and that was the positive and powerful Dr. Jeffrey Holmes.
Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.